The crackling of the fireplace filled Zarantha's tavern with a welcoming warmth, wrapping itself around those present, blending with the scent of freshly baked bread, the faint aroma of dried rosemary hanging from the crooked beams, and the earthy touch of spilled wine staining the wooden floorboards. The stone walls, worn down by centuries of laughter and brawls, bore cracks veined with moss along their joints, reflecting the history of a city that thrived in the lightness of its distance from the rest of the world. The wooden floor creaked beneath the coming and going of worn boots, leather sandals, and the bare feet of curious children peeking in through the doors. At the heart of the hall stood an oak table, scratched by countless nights of celebration, serving as an improvised stage, its deep marks telling stories of slammed mugs and sharpened knives. Atop it, balancing with a mix of boldness and uncertainty, stood Caius, a 15-winter-old boy, chubby-bodied and rosy-cheeked, with tousled dark hair falling over bright brown eyes that gleamed with a blend of joy and mischief. His brown tunic, a little tight at the sleeves, revealed full wrists, and he gestured with enthusiasm, holding a harmonica with steady fingers as he gathered the breath to blow. The crowd, a lively mix of merchants in dusty cloaks, blacksmiths with muscular arms, and shepherds in simple tunics, was already smiling before he even began, drawn more by the boy's energy than by any polished skill. Children giggled along the edges, and an old man with a snow-white beard clapped his hands in time with his wheezing breath. Caius straightened his posture, puffing out his chest with a pride that was almost comical, and announced in a high-pitched tone that echoed through the beams.
"Friends of Zarenth, hear now the saga of the duck who dreamed of the stars."
A chorus of sharp whistles and enthusiastic applause filled the air, mingled with the clinking of spoons against bowls. He began a light dance, his feet stumbling in clumsy steps that nearly sent him off the edge of the table, but he recovered with a graceful leap, his knees creaking under the weight, drawing sighs of relief and stifled giggles. Bringing the harmonica to his lips, he blew carefully, releasing a clear, surprisingly harmonious melody that floated through the hall like a gentle breeze. He continued, reciting with a sparkle in his eyes.
"Beneath the sky of Zarenth, where the stars do sing, the duck raised its beak, dreams taking wing. With moonlit feathers, he soared on the breeze, and danced with the constellations with effortless ease."
The tavern fell silent for a moment to hear the words, while the harmonica played once more, clear and lovely, the faces lit with a contemplative laughter, as if witnessing a spectacle in the simplicity of the music. Then, the hall erupted in applause, a blacksmith pounding his fist on the table, and a woman lifting a loaf of bread as if in a toast. Caius leaned toward a young woman in the front row, with blonde hair and shy eyes, winking at her with a mischievous smile.
"See, Nira? Even ducks dance better than I do."
The girl laughed, covering her mouth, and he spun around, pleased, the sound of the harmonica echoing like birdsong over a lake. In the corner of the room, his father, Auren, watched from a worn wooden chair, his sturdy frame resting with the ease of one who had faced harsher winds. His graying hair, tied back in a low tail, contrasted with the faded red cloak draped over his shoulders, marked by long journeys and secrets kept. His deep, amber-brown eyes gleamed with quiet pride as he tapped the rhythm with his calloused fingers on the table, following the crooked tune of his son. He stood, picking up a spoon as if it were a conductor's baton, and began to hum in a firm voice, a tone that carried echoes of old songs.
"O duck of the stars, your flight is a charm, you rule the night with grace, in a sky of enchantment."
The crowd laughed, delighted, and a child clapped with hands still dirty from bread. Caius, energized, leapt from the table to the floor, spinning in a pirouette that ended in a slight stumble, his feet slipping on the polished wood, but he steadied himself with a wide grin, raising his arms like a master of ceremonies.
"Applaud the poet, not the misstep."
The tavern answered with warm applause, a blacksmith shouting,
"One more, Caius."
The night went on, and Caius tapped a fork against a mug, asking for attention. He now stood more confidently, his shoulders relaxed beneath his wrinkled tunic. He played the harmonica, a romantic melody that warmed hearts, and began.
A poem for the lovely lady.
Bowing with a flourish toward the young woman he had flirted with earlier, his words stumbled out in a hesitant tone.
The wind blows strong, the moon hides away, the beauty of a lucky flower and the duck. Nothing and falls on the clay.
The crowd burst into laughter, some pounding their fists on the tables, and an old woman shouted,
"Your duck needs a map, boy."
He shrugged, laughing with his head thrown back, and Auren stepped forward, holding a mug of mead in one hand while resting the other warmly on his son's shoulder.
Your heart is music, boy, not poetry,
he said, with a conspiratorial smile that drew fresh laughter, as a shepherd stomped his feet on the floor in approval. Together, father and son improvised a slow dance, Caius following Auren's steady steps, guided with a precision that bordered on theatrical. The tavern joined in with a clumsy chant, hoarse voices blending with the sound of the harmonica, and the hall pulsed with the rhythm, shadows dancing on the walls like joyful ghosts. The moment of cheer reached its peak when Caius, swept up by the crowd's energy, climbed onto a higher counter and announced with a flourish.
The dance of the celestial falcon.
He stretched out his arms like wings, swaying his body with precarious balance, but his weight betrayed him. He slipped, falling sideways with a soft thud, the harmonica rolling across the floor and bouncing off a table leg. The crowd erupted in laughter, and a mug went flying, splashing beer across the counter, while a child pointed and laughed loudly. Caius, still chuckling, pulled himself up with effort, rubbing his hip with an exaggerated grimace.
Looks like the falcon turned into a sparrow.
He joked. Auren helped him down, chuckling as he wiped a drop of beer from his cloak.
Time to rest, my flying poet,
he said, wrapping his arms around him as the tavern applauded one last time, the clapping blending with the crackling of the fireplace as it began to fade. The lamp light dimmed, casting long shadows, and the patrons slowly dispersed, leaving the hall in a peaceful silence, broken only by the distant sound of a dog barking in the streets. The next morning, the sun had barely risen, painting the sky over Zarenth in shades of pale orange, when Auren, still wrapped in his red cloak, opened the door of his modest home on the outskirts of the city. He didn't sleep much, spending many nights awake studying ancient manuscripts that Caius still couldn't read. The fresh air carried the scent of damp earth, and a raven landed on the windowsill, its black wings gleaming under the faint light as it dropped a scroll sealed with wax. Auren took the roll with steady hands, his eyes narrowing as he broke the seal with a swift motion. Caius, yawning and rubbing his sleepy eyes, approached, his tunic wrinkled and hair even messier than usual.
"What's that, father?"
he asked, his hoarse voice cutting through the morning silence. Auren read in silence, the calm face from the night before collapsing into a mask of tension. His fingers clenched the scroll, knuckles whitening, his eyes briefly welling with tears. He composed himself and murmured only,
Venth. Too soon.
He rushed back inside, scribbling something onto a new scroll. He looked at Caius, the weight in his brown eyes now a storm held back, and his voice came out dry, sharp.
Something serious has happened. Get ready. Now.
Without waiting for an answer, he turned, grabbing a worn leather pack, his staff carved with faded runes, and a guitar that had clearly seen better days. Caius furrowed his brow, the playful sparkle from yesterday replaced by a restlessness he couldn't understand, but he obeyed, picking up the cracked harmonica with trembling hands. Auren flung the door open with a sharp motion, handed the freshly scribbled scroll to the raven, and they set off down the road, the sun rising slowly over Zarenth as the raven vanished into the horizon, its wings blending with the black stone of the buildings and the morning mist.